Hey folks, David Stewart here. I'd like to show you guys something a little bit different today, something that I think is a product that I'd like to see more of, and unfortunately I don't see a whole lot of these. This is the Amazing Spuderman Epic Collection. This is the very first volume. It's called Great Power. These aren't easily numbered on the sides, but this is volume 1, and this is something that I really wish Marvel would do more of, which is collect the comics from a particular hero or particular series and put them in a chronological order, so you can actually acquire some of these earlier comics, especially rarer ones, and see them in a pretty high quality physical medium, and just read all of the stories in the order that they actually came out in. So this is something that I really wish they would sell a lot more of, but they don't put these out super often, and they don't put them out in large quantities. These things I feel like should be selling like hotcakes because of the success of the movies, but it doesn't seem like they get a whole lot of traction. But anyway, let's take a look at this one. This one is the very first one for Spider-Man, the Amazing Spuderman Epic Collection. A lot of these comics I had in other collections, but it was really cool to get these in one collection. This copy is used, but it was damaged in shipping, I think, which is unfortunate, but it's okay because I really bought this to read with my son, who's 4, and so my expectation is it's going to get kind of thrashed up, and I'm okay with that. So this is a new cover, and before I dig into things, one of the things you'll notice with the cover is it has some of this modern gradient look. This is something that I think looks a little bit weird next to this, what I would consider kind of a classic rendition of the art. It's intended to look like Steve Ditko's art. I don't think Steve Ditko actually did this cover. I'm not sure who did it. This is a recolorization of a panel from one of the Inside comics with Dr. Octopus fighting Spider-Man there. But I don't like these gradient colors on the cover here. I think they really don't work. And you can kind of see that when we flip open. We have a nice table of contents that has everything in it, every single page and every single issue that's there. It's got a list of who's in there. Additional pencilers, Jack Kirby. There is a Jack Kirby pencil comic in here. I think there might actually be 2, but they're pretty cool and they're pretty good. And it's kind of nice to see them side by side, so you can see Steve Ditko and Jack Kirby's art right next to each other. But the very first cover here of Amazing Fantasy, this is where they introduce Spider-Man. You can see it's got the standard flat colors for its cover. So this tends to look a little weird to me when we have the classic inking and the classic art. This would probably look fine with more modern approach to inking and things versus this kind of classic hashing, but it's okay. It doesn't bug me too much. So it's really cool. You get to have the Amazing Fantasy story and see how Spider-Man began. And I'm going to do another video just on that particular comic because I think it's a great example of a kind of 3-act tragic structure that really makes you like Peter Parker. One thing that I will note about this is that these pages are a glossy magazine page. They're not really thick stock. They really do feel kind of thin and flimsy, which makes me, a little bit worried because my son really likes to just pick this up and flip through it and look at the pictures and have me read certain sections of it to him. So I expect it to get pretty thrashed. That's why I got it. I kind of got it on a discount. So I'm fine with this being thrashed. The other thing is the magazine and the glossy look, which you can see kind of the hot spot from my light here. This doesn't look quite right for this art. If you've ever looked at this kind of art on the original paper, it comes on a very pulpy newspaper kind of stock. It softens the colors a lot more. In my opinion, I think the original newspaper stock makes this approach to art look much better. The high gloss, high contrast result of the magazine paper makes the art look a little too stark. Like this blue is really blue. Whereas if you saw it on the actual newsprint, that blue would be much more muted. Likewise, the dark blacks would look more like grays because of the fact that the ink kind of gets soaked into the page. The lines would not be quite as hard on the newspaper as they are on this. Everything would look a little bit softer. And so the contrast, say, between blue and black, the blue would not look nearly as bright as it does here. And this also, by the way, maybe I could talk about this some other time. The original version of Spider-Man here, he's actually black, because one of the things that you do when you have something wearing black, for instance, this policeman, if somebody's wearing a black, you highlight the black with blue. I think the policeman's actually wearing blue, but you highlight the black with blue because that's the only way to make a lighter color on black that doesn't make it stop looking like black. It's really to do it with blue. So if you look at Venom, Venom's actually blue, right? All of his highlights are in blue. So Spider-Man in this original version comes off as much more black in his costume than the later versions of Spider-Man, where he comes off as being kind of unambiguously more blue as you get on here. The other thing about color accuracy I'll make a point about, and I don't know if you can see it on this screen, but the blues in some of these pages actually come out as a purple. And I think that would also look different on the original stock. So rather than Spider-Man being a bright blue here, he comes off as kind of a purple in some spots. And I don't know if that had to do with some color grading or the fact that this was probably closer to the original color. It just looks different on the magazine pages. So overall, it's a great product. It contains like all of the classic original stories. And one of the things I like about these original stories is that they're very condensed with their storytelling. They tell the story very, very quickly. So if we just look at Spider-Man #1, there's actually 2 stories in Spider-Man #1. The first one is this story about Spider-Man saving Jameson's kid. And the second one is actually Spider-Man versus the Chameleon. So back in the day, you used to get one book and you would get two stories in that one book, rather than getting one book and getting 1/6 of a 6-issue series or some fraction of some even longer series like what you get now. It's a great example of condensed storytelling. So if you're interested in more classic comic storytelling that's very condensed and goes through the plot quickly and efficiently with efficient use of dialogue throughout, these volumes by Steve Ditko and Stan Lee are just a great one to look at, as well as looking at all of the classic art and the classic shading that Steve Ditko did. He really did a great job telling the story visually and these great facial expressions. It's great. It's a good little volume here. I would recommend it if you can get a deal on it, especially. It's a good way to just collect all of the stories if you're not looking to get like the highest quality paper and things like that. But it is actually a pretty high quality product considering how much actual story you get in this. So thanks so much for watching and listening to this. Let me know what you think down below. If you have any of these other epic collections from the early days, let me know what you think about them and whether you think it's worth continuing to buy them. I'll probably buy a couple more Spider-Man volumes to get some of the Spider-Man comics I had when I was a kid too. So thanks so much, and I'll see you guys next time.